Man ska berätta något roligt skämt. Jag har tyvärr inget i bakfickan.
Sorry for that.
Så.
Sorry.
Ja. Varsågod.
Thank you.
Yeah, sorry with the technology. Thank you very much for the invitation, and then thank you very much for the very interesting morning. I feel like everything was said, or at least so many important things were raised up. So, but I'll try to focus on some of the issues, however. But so I'm coming from Helsinki Deaconess Institute. It's a public foundation of public utility. So, and we are working a lot on social exclusion, social work. And one of the most important things for us is also human dignity that Tarja was mentioning, and of course human rights. And we are trying to work with people who are in the most vulnerable situation. And of course to find strength and power in everyone, and to support people to find such strengths. Yeah, so just to tell that myself, I started to work with the Institute in 2008 as an outreach worker, exactly on a project on Roma migrants in Helsinki. I'll of course tell something about the project and so on. I'm originally from Romania. I worked then as an outreach worker and social worker, and now I study social anthropology. And one of the things that I'm interested in is like everyday experiences of mobility, and how families and women and children experience everyday life, marginalization and so on in such daily mobilities. But you have already been introduced a bit to the situation in the home country. Obviously, it's not so good. I have some statistics, but not now. But obviously, Roma in Romania are at the bottom of statistics in regards to all areas: education, housing, access to healthcare, housing, and so on. Also, of course, Tarja's pictures were amazing. She was showing, and very sad, of course, she was showing these very, very bad houses or like homes. And we have to remember that even those places are removed sometimes by the authorities. Like just this year, there have been these scandals in regards to forced evictions, and Amnesty is doing a lot of work, and it's important that each of us sign these petitions that they do. So basically many times these kind of homes are built on areas that belong to the municipalities, and usually the story goes so that when a company wants to offer money to build or do something in that specific area, of course the municipality will just remove people from there, even though they live there for years. We just had this year, actually, the mayor of one city, Constanța, even gave a public interview when he said that, well, he made this kind of comparison that, for example, if you have this shop meat and pigs are waiting to get some leftovers, when the shop is closed, pigs are leaving, or dogs. So it was an example related to the fact that, well, when these homes will be removed, Roma will just leave. So this is the responsibility that the public authority felt about this situation. So, we have, of course, all these social, economic circumstances and complex circumstances related to racism. We were just discussing a bit before that maybe in the Nordic countries, this kind of public racism cannot at least be said loudly. But in Romania, there have been many recent scandals in regards to the Romanian president, for example, who was calling a journalist, maybe of Roma origin or not, a dirty gypsy, and so on. He was not, nothing happened to him. He went to the court, but it was not sued. But then he made other comments in an official visit in Slovenia, so that all Romas are thieves and blah blah and so on. So I mean, then he was sued. But well, he never thought to leave the office, for example. So obviously, this kind of, I think for many people, this kind of open racism and accepted racism, it's astonishing. So we have all these circumstances in the home country. Of course, we have, as you all know, Romania used to be a socialist country, very heavy communist system, freedom of mobility. Once we joined the European Union in 2007, but of course the communists collapsed in '89. Many people tried to leave already then. Then we have, of course, the transition from communism to a market economy, which is a very hard thing. The communist system was harsh, and as you know, political and civil rights were infringed all the time. But in regards to social economic rights, there was at least some kind of security, or at least these forms of social exclusion and differences in between social class were not so visible. But well, obviously Romania is going forward towards a market economy. Differences in between social classes are increasing and so on. Basically there's no middle class generally. Of course, minorities and so on, they have even worse conditions and so on. So people want to get a better life by searching opportunities in different places. Of course, we have this context in some of the new member countries, Bulgaria, Romania, and then we have the situation in Western Europe, in the receiving European Union countries, where of course the attitudes towards migrants, migration and so on, it's not a very good one. We all know kind of Europe, it's like called the fortress of Europe and so on. Everyone is speaking more about selective migration, which are the migrants that we actually want, that can work and integrate and so on. I just heard one researcher in England, she had a very interesting point. She was speaking about migration, integration before the border. So somehow receiving states are expecting that the person comes ready to fit to the labor market in the destination country and everything, and so on. So in 2008, it also happened in Finland that, let's say, people begging on the streets or practicing different street activities were more visible. Most probably, I mean, there is an idea that, for example, there were people, of course, before 2008 also, but they were maybe applying for asylum and so on, and practicing other day activities and precarious work, so they were not so visible. But in 2008, there was a big discussion. There were people begging on the streets. Of course, this doesn't fit to the Nordic model of welfare. Politicians and so on were discussing that begging disappeared a long time ago from Finland, so this is something that doesn't fit at all to this country. And obviously the people who were begging were outsiders. There was, at the policy level and kind of legal and political discussions, begging and street activities were very much criminalized, where all of them put in the same box. They were discussed from the perspective of the public security, public threat. For example, the municipality organized a group, beggars working group, which was supposed to deal with this problem. The whole issue was very much discussed from the public, once again from public safety and so on. The begging law was discussed. I think also it was something that last week it was discussed in Sweden, but I could ask you more. But in Finland it was discussed many times. It didn't pass and so on. Everyone in the end admitted that you cannot criminalize poverty. Also, human trafficking law and provisions were very much discussed, and it was interesting to hear this question because I think it's all the time related to this subject, human trafficking and so on. And it seems that if we have oppression and human trafficking, we need to find measures to support the victims. We all know human trafficking is a horrible crime, but kind of thinking to fix the law and to kind of direct these issues towards a specific group and so on, and thinking just about criminalizing but not actually offering support to victims, it's not a good thing either. In Finland, just to say, there was just one case officially ruled as a human trafficking case. It was related to sex work and so on, but there is not any other understanding that there would be such elements. But of course we all also know that it's also very difficult to investigate and to have people to discuss, victims and so on, to discuss about this. However, I mean, the municipality was interested to have one project or one organization which would like to discuss with the people, to find out their conditions and to offer acute humanitarian aid. So it's back then in 2008 when we started, so we were basically doing outreach work, going on the streets, discussing with people about their everyday circumstances, conditions and so on, then offering acute humanitarian aid, meaning facilitating health and social services, acute ones. As in the case of Sweden, obviously, also in Finland, EU citizens have the right just to acute health and social services. And of course we were trying to do a lot of advocacy in the sense of writing petitions, for example, to the ombudsperson for minorities and so on, since we were noticing that people are facing lots of oppression and discrimination on the streets and so on, with the police, with the security forces and so on. And there were also threatening situations for us when being on the streets with the people. So this outreach work was taking place between 2008 2010. Among the findings, obviously, it was that, I mean, people were and are living in Finland in very bad socio-economical conditions. The housing is very poor, as you have seen the pictures from Sweden. I think very similar condition. Just to say that, of course, camping in Finland is illegal. This is also one provision that was emphasized much more after the arrival of the EU migrants. So, how can you implement it? It's very difficult. Basically, the police, it's going to people who are sleeping in the cars or having a camp and so on, waking them up in the middle of the night and telling that, hey, you need to go to a hostel or to a hotel. Well, everyone knows that they will not go. Then the police is following sometimes for a while. And it goes on like this. It's a kind of very schizophrenic situation for everyone, for the police, for the people, and for everyone. But there's nothing else to do for the moment. Then obviously these feelings of marginalization, of course, I remember that one quote discussing with few of the people, that what would they wish, for example, from the authorities, what would be a good solution. And people would always say that we want this kind of plat, like maybe they used to have in Italy, like basically a space somewhere remote outside of the city where they can sleep and be, basically. So it's amazing, this kind of locality that they think that they are entitled to receive. And this very much probably relates to the circumstances in the home country, to these position of being always marginalized and outside and so on. Also, of course, I mean, we discussed the access to social and health security and so on in Finland, and of course this very much relates to the status of being EU tourists, and whatever this means, and these concepts have been very much discussed as well. And I think I'm really happy that today we are here and we speak about migrants, because it took 5 years. We were talking about beggars for many years, and we didn't even realize that they are migrants. So, and one thing, because of course we are talking, we need to, it was very interesting also to see the history of Roma this morning and so on. Even though, I mean, sometimes, and it's very important how people interpret it, because sometimes, for example, in Romania, I think that also this linkage to India or something, or in Europe, make people think that these people should go back home or they are coming from somewhere. Like in Romania, there's not an idea of full citizenship for Roma. People still have the idea that they came from somewhere and they are going back. And as we know, Czech Republic and so on has similar ideas. And then, of course, we need to somehow put these people in a box. And we are put everyone is put in a way or another in a box. But I mean, of course, we need to think also that things are much more complicated. That, of course, people belong to the different groups. They have their own identities, and there are other issues like gender, social class in the home country and here, and a lot of this kind of dimensions which kind of influence this everyday living. So we don't speak about one person, not at all. Well, and I mean, obviously, when this discussion was going on a lot in Finland, and I mean, of course, there was lots of questions about responsibility. Whose responsibility and what kind of responsibility? Now, I mean, is it a moral responsibility? Okay, third sector can do it, or a church, or whoever wants to do it, but municipalities don't have to do it, and so on. And of course, lots of responsibility was directed to the home countries, that home countries should take care, and then EU, since EU is so abstract, but I think now people got tired to wait anything in that sense from EU. But but well, it was obviously, I mean, when all this discussion was going on, that this concept of social Europe, and as I was talking about this social security systems, which are so different in between different countries, and we can go back still to this health insurance in Romania, which is a problem. We have this idea of social Europe and so on, but still, I mean, there are lots of discrepancies, and then we can see that social security in different countries, it's quite much linked to the residency. Of course, belonging to a municipality gives the rights, and then citizenship is a different thing. But well, I mean, this idea of social Europe and soft regulations and so on, obviously. Okay, but I mean, however, even though the climate has been very, very difficult, I mean, generally in Finland, of course, I mean, we have to, there were very, let's say, dual. I mean, on one line you had this, that these people have to be helped in the home countries by the home authorities. They are Romanian citizens. The social emergency services made some guidelines that first resort should be the embassy. So always you have to go to the embassy. If nothing happens, okay, we see what we do. And then, of course, you would have public opinion and some citizens and organizations and churches who would think that, hey, people are here and we need to, and the human dignity and human rights and so on are our first priority, however. So, however, this humanitarian element has been always. So, but when we were having this work on the streets for 2 years, we noticed that obviously this acute humanitarian aid is very important, and people need this in their everyday living and circumstances. But it would be important to have a place where they can basically have their lunches, have a shower, be just a space to be, because, for example, Helsinki railway station, it's a very difficult place to be. We've been there buying coffee with people, and the security officers came and they were telling they will start soon to bake, and it's forbidden. And we were like, yeah, they are waiting to buy coffee. No, but they will soon bake. We know them, okay? Actually, these places where they can be, public places and spaces, they are quite limited also and problematic. So we were thinking it would be good to have a place where people can come. We also noticed that it's very important to focus, of course, on empowerment of people. Of course, it's very abstract and so on. But however, having this kind of processes where people can think about their rights, their future, their strength, because I mean, we've seen these pictures of poverty and so on, and of course, very difficult circumstances, and all kinds of changes at policy and national levels have to be done. But of course, we have to also see the fact that these people have lots of kind of strength and agency. They have the courage to live. They basically replace their social security system in the home countries. So it's quite amazing. We opened this day center, Hirundo. It's a day center, but it's a project, basically also, where there are these premises basically like what was presented in regards to Gothenburg. we have a space, people can come, have shower, have their lunches, own lunches and so on. And then we try to focus a lot on women rights. We have like a workshop with women and we discuss about their everyday experiences, and then we have different experts in regards to different fields, for example, reproductive health, access to health services and so on. And then one area that it seemed to be very important was, of course, getting the possibility to generate income in a different way. So basically employment or any other form of generating income, because we all know, I mean, and people say begging is very stressful. You are a full-time worker, even more than a full-time worker, waiting the whole day. It might be that at the end of the day you have something or not. So, well, very precarious work. So we started these programs on employment, meaning basically that we would do CVs with the people, look for work, call for work, and so on. As you can imagine, well, the opportunities were not many in Finland. Labor market, I suppose, is similar to here. I mean, it's quite rigid. It's even rigid towards the, let's say, to the Finnish people who have been long-term unemployed, and for the migrants it's even more difficult. And then for Roma migrants or migrants from Eastern Europe, if they don't speak languages especially, it seemed to be very difficult. However, we tried. There are some success stories. Of course, there are very precarious sectors in which they work, and that's, I think, another dilemma of our work. I mean, there might be construction companies which offer something. We know that the contract is vulnerable. I mean, sometimes probably it exists, but however, it's very problematic in regards to labor rights, or for example, cleaning sector and so on. And this is, of course, a different dilemma, and one dilemma as well. But then also we had these language courses and just basically like basic skills on how you can find job, how can you apply for work and so on. And so I will tell more because we are in 2014. But basically, I mean, our main thing were this acute humanitarian aid, this let's say pressing some specific rights and some specific groups like women and children and so on, then having this path towards employment, hoping that we can have like a longer term impact and making a change, of course, in people's life and people making their change themselves. And then this advocacy at the national level and EU level and back in the home country, Romania or Bulgaria. This is just one method that we use a lot. I mean, this capability approach, obviously, thinking that everyone has the possibility and everyone should find their own strength and own path and make own plan and so on. This, I think, one thing also that we didn't discuss maybe today so much, but of course it's quite important to think what people think that should be important for them, and how we are able to make people to be part of planning all these services and programs and policy and so on. And I think this is also challenging we've noticed because, well, obviously when the person lacks these basic needs, I mean, basically the concrete example that the person has to be in the city to beg, to get this daily amount of money to live, obviously it's very difficult to be active and so on. But and to involve and to participate in different programs. But I think also in regards to this, at least Amnesty Helsinki has very good results in Cluj. It's very close to this Timișoara, where they've been working a lot with this community which was forcibly evicted. And now the community, also with this international support and so on, started to understand that, hey, we can make a change, we can go to the municipality, we can hold these people accountable and so on. So this is also something that we should really focus on for the long-term change, that such communities also in the home country and here and so on should advocate themselves also a lot, but they need support, of course. This is also about the same model. Maybe it's not so, but I mean, of course we have this exposure a lot, like being with the people and people being with themselves and thinking about their identities, biographies, skills, wishes for the future, communities and so on, and then making this kind of model actions for change. So we usually have this kind of 20 people groups is like really at the beginning, where they kind of can plan and think about the future, and it's also a very dual process. I mean, the volunteers and the workers are part of the processes, so it's not like a up to down approach or something that we are providing some service, but it should be a mutual process, and I think it's been quite appreciated, especially among the Roma, because I think it's been quite much this idea that we are taught that we should do like this or we shouldn't do like this and so on. And of course it should, I mean, we should have this micro level, these people's levels and so on, but then we should have this stakeholders levels, policies and so on. But if we look about the future, I mean, as I said, well, there are many challenges. Obviously the atmosphere in Europe and so on is that I think these populist movements are growing even in Finland. I mean, the attitudes are getting worse in regards to migrants in general. So this is really the group which is at the bottom, and no one is thinking a lot or at all, or everyone is thinking that nothing should be done, basically, because, well, we even have our older migrants, let's say, the migrants who have been for a longer time in the country, and we didn't manage to integrate them with them and so on. No one wants to think about the newcomers. Of course there is a discussion also that this model of welfare or of well-being, which is universal and covers everyone and so on, cannot exist anymore, or it's like narrowing and narrowing. So we should kind of accept that there are groups and people in the society who don't have access and so on. In that sense, the attitudes are not so good. However, we need this acute humanitarian aid. I think also Tarja's pictures were showing very clearly that, absolute poverty still exists in Europe, also a lot. And nowadays, even in the Nordic countries, in regards to some groups, not even to talk about marginalization and discrimination and